2014 was the ACO's first year with the hybrid-biased, faster CLM P1 regulations for the World Endurance Championship. The CLM P1 hybrid subclass was for manufacturers, and the non-hybrid subclass existed for privateers not affiliated with a major automobile manufacturer. The latter cars got little glory and recognition compared to their hybrid counterparts until the days of the World Endurance Championship Super Season, but that's a story for another time. The car we're covering today is one of those non-hybrid LMP1 cars. It's called the Bykolles ENSO CLM P101. Bykolles is the team running it, ENSO is the make, and CLM P101 is the model. The team's namesake, Dr. Colin Collis, a Romanian-German former dentist, has been a recurring face in top-level motorsports for the past decade and a half, running teams in disciplines as diverse as DTM and Formula One. This is the first car commissioned by the man himself with his name on it. Its debut came as a surprise to the sports car community, as it appeared to have come from nowhere. In this video, more focus will be paid on the car's Le Mans efforts, as covering the race-by-race participation of the car would be exhaustive. In Le Mans, it's every team's greatest focus anyway. Its origins lie in the quote-unquote Lotus, quote-unquote Praga, T128 LMP2 car, which is also a Collis project from 2013. The quote-unquote Lotus LMP2 had an advanced monocoque that was legal for 2014 to 2020 LMP1 rules. The car came at a time when the actual Lotus manufacturer was struggling for cash and was licensing out their name to any team which paid enough. Therefore, there were quite a few teams racing in the early 2010s with little relation to the actual Lotus manufacturer, running the same black and gold livery. This Collis Lotus team was one of them. ADAS AG is a small German race car constructor, which is occasionally commissioned to do special projects. They are known for the high-quality CFD, or computational fluid dynamics work. This quote-unquote Lotus prototype was their very first project, and the chance to show how competent they really are. The sleek black prototype, which bore slight resemblance to the original Audi R18, was propelled by a BMW S65 V8 tuned by Judd and badged by Praga, a Czech manufacturer. Yes, this project did have a ridiculous amount of brands attached to it. The S65, rebadged HK, used in the T128 and every other LMP2 car that used it, was de-stroked to 3.6 liters to allow it to rev higher. The engine produced around 450 to 480 horsepower at 9,000 RPM and around 300 pound-feet of torque at 7,500. This meant that the engine had to be driven at the top of the rev range all day to get any real power out of it. Furthermore, this V8 was of a flat-plane crankshaft design, which revs more freely than the more typical cross-plane V8s, but has much more inherent vibration, which can particularly shake car parts loose over long periods of hard racing. Despite this, similar small V8s have been used in race cars for decades with very much success. This BMW Judd V8 was an exception, as it didn't have the drivability of the Nissan V8 which dominated the class, nor the power potential of the Honda V6 Turbo. Two cars were entered in the 2013 season of the World Endurance Championship. The T128's first races were marred by reliability problems, which weren't compensated for with a decent pace, as the cars qualified near the back of the class in both races before Le Mans. Le Mans would therefore be a race won on whatever reliability they could find. To add insult to injury, Lotus itself was running low on cash, so the often struggling manufacturer withdrew its backing before the race. This led to legal troubles tied to unpaid invoices before the race, and the cars were even briefly seized in court. car remained without Lotus sponsorship afterward. Despite its high straight line speed, the unreliable Judd engine and teething issues prevented it from mounting a real challenge to the Orica hegemony of LMP2. Both cars retired in the middle of the race because of technical issues. The rest of the World Endurance Championship season was similarly lackluster, with the T128s not making a large impact in the race events besides a third place in class in the 6 hours of the Circuit of the Americas. The Lotus T128 was never seen again in this form after this year. Fast forward to 2014, and the new LMP1 was unveiled at Le Mans, coincidentally called the quote-unquote Lotus T129 and run by Bykolles. Originally designed around the naturally aspirated Audi DTM V8, the quote-unquote Lotus debuted later in the season, with AER P60 2.4-liter turbo V6 power. The deal to use the Audi V8 fell through, leading to a last-second engine change. This meant that the car missed racing at Le Mans that year, instead debuting at the 6 hours of the Circuit of the Americas. Its name also changed to the Lotus P101. AER's then new engine has been praised by the drivers in nearly every press release for its power, torque, and drivability. Information about the engine is tough to come by, despite literally being for sale to customers. Even its size was a mystery for a very long time, not to mention its power and torque figures. An engine this mysterious honestly fits the Bykolles team perfectly. The car's debut surprised many cynical internet sports car fans, who barely expected the machine to roll under its own power, as Bykolles has a track record of jumping from project to project, which hasn't exactly led to world-class performances. Curiously, there is no direct Lotus branding on the car, most likely tied to the legal troubles from the year prior. Bykolles businesses like PMC and Hecky Corporation replaced the Lotus branding and stuck with the car until the end of its racing life. What these companies actually do is a mystery. From what I could find, Hecky manages business assets and is owned by Bykolles himself. Either way, they keep the team afloat and appear to be registered in Germany. The team does have other outside sponsors, so these money sources are legitimate enough not to scare off outside help. The car had its predecessor straight line speed, but was slow everywhere else, even struggling to beat LMP2 cars. It even caught fire that year, which would become a very recurring trend. At the 6 hours of Fuji, the fire was caused by a ruptured fuel line that ran inside the cockpit. If you're wondering to yourself, that sounds ridiculously unsafe, it was. They did this because the engine ran hot enough to mess up the fuel flow sensor, and the cockpit was apparently the coolest spot they could place it at the time. Out of the 5 races that the car entered, it only finished 2 of them, at Circuit of the Americas and Shanghai, neither raced particularly high in the finishing order. Despite never running more than one car at a time, apparently they built 6 chassis. After 2014's lackluster season, Bykolles decided to ditch the Lotus name and run the car under his own. CLM stands for CLM Le Mans. A new name brought a new livery too, with the black and gold John Player special livery replaced with the original highlighter yellow and white livery. Despite this, Lotus still appears on the chassis homologation plates. Upgrades to the troublesome transmission and awkward aerodynamics were slowly introduced throughout the season, culminating in the car actually winning its subclass a couple times. 2015 also brought even more technical issues due to the car being one of the few bespoke privateer race cars left in any form of sports car racing. The car spent almost as much time in the garage for repairs as it did on track. Notably, the CLM P101 actually crossed the finish line at Le Mans for the only time in its surprisingly long career. However, it was disqualified because the driver was underweight and the car didn't cover 70% of the overall winner's distance. The category wins came at the Nürburgring and Circuit of the Americas. mostly because the faster Rebellion cars had even more technical issues with the AER engine. Neither the Rebellion nor Bykolles were anywhere near quick enough to challenge the might of Audi, Porsche, and Toyota in the first place. Despite their suspect reliability, Bykolles was able to finish every race after Le Mans for the 2015 season. Like in 2015, LMP1 non-hybrid was a two-horse race between Bykolles and Rebellion Racing. 2016 brought several upgrades, like a new 7-speed transmission and interesting-looking aero flaps on both sides of the nose cone. Sadly, the dark gray Bykolles was a dark horse at best for class victory, only taking one at Shanghai, as Rebellion somehow was even more unreliable than Bykolles. The little 2.4-liter V6 used by both teams was fairly powerful, but often preferred external combustion to the internal variety. Thus, the race for LMP1L honors was simply one of staying alive. LMP1 rules at the time were heavily in favor of hybrid cars, so the slightly lighter privateers had almost no chance of fighting for the overall podium unless a meteor struck all the factory teams at once. Le Mans 2016 was marred by multiple fires, further solidifying the car's reputation for external combustion. The car had already spent a considerable amount of time in the pits, so this was far from unexpected. Knowing the unlikelihood of a privateer winning Le Mans at this point, Rebellion devoted themselves to the current rules LMP2 class in 2017. After all, their LMP2 car, the Oreca 07, was conveniently built on the same chassis as their LMP1. Hell, it was even slightly faster because of that class's power hike, from 460-ish to 600 horsepower with the new rules. Praga/A-Bykolles wasn't listed as one of the 4 LMP2 constructors, so Bykolles soldiered on alone in the LMP1 light class, which was technically abolished for that year. Knowing that they were now technically up against the might of the juggernauts Toyota and Porsche, Bykolles knew they had to upgrade the machine somehow. New bulbous, low-drag aerodynamics were fitted to the now 4-year-old car, while in the rear went Nissan's 3-liter twin-turbo V6 from the ill-fated LMP1 project. This engine was rumored to be extremely powerful when freed of the fuel restrictions it had running in the LMP1 hybrid class, and was one of the few good things about that Nissan LMP1 car. Apparently, Nissan lent backdoor support with running the engines, as the Japanese company sent its engineers to help out the team with a new power plant. The upgrades did have some degree of effectiveness, as the P101 was now comfortably faster than the even faster LMP2 cars, but not enough to match the factory hybrid LMP1 cars. At Le Mans that year, the car could have had its best chance to win ever, with every LMP1 hybrid having some kind of major issue. This was not to be, sadly. On the first lap, the poor Bykolles hit some debris, which damaged the bodywork and greatly impacted engine cooling. This led to the car becoming the race's first retirement, a familiar position for the team. To add further insult to injury, the 2017 Le Mans was a huge race of attrition, so the Bykolles team was sat wondering what could have been, as their competitors dropped like flies around them. However, big changes were on the horizon for top-level prototype racing. Porsche would lead the LMP1 class, making Toyota the only manufacturer left. To compensate, private teams were granted massive performance buffs to entice them to join. At the time, Toyota was still suffering from its Le Mans curse, so an enterprising privateer could potentially roll up with a car faster and more reliable than one of the most technologically advanced race cars of all time. Bykolles saw stiffer competition on the horizon and pulled out of the rest of the 2017 races in the World Endurance Championship calendar after the Nürburgring round. They needed to improve their car, and fast. The CLM P101's first appearance in 2018 was during the 6-hour Spa-Francorchamps, now sporting the new name ENSO. The previous race at Sebring was likely skipped because that course is notoriously hard in cars, and the ENSO would have had even more issues than usual making the end of that race. Why travel across the Atlantic Ocean just to break down? To make life easier for the Bykolles, several of its competitors spectacularly removed themselves from the race before it even began because of violent wrecks or funding issues. The Nissan engines brought the machine within striking range of its competition, but reliability would still be the main issue the team would face. Miraculously, the CLM managed to finish 4th in its first race with the new rule set. Things were finally looking up for the Austrian flag team based in Germany. This momentum carried to Le Mans, where the car actually managed to outqualify the competitor for once. Granted, the team they outqualified was around 200 horsepower down on power, and qualifying was a matter of a 24-hour race, but at this point, anything possible for Bykolles with victory in and of itself. The team ran semi-reliably until lap 65, where it collided with amateur Porsche in the Porsche curves. This ended the race right then and there. The car would only complete 2 more races for the whole FIA World Endurance Championship Super Season, Fuji 2018 and Spa 2019. 2019 saw the replacement of the Nissan V6 with a Gibson 4.5-liter V8 like Rebellion ran since 2018. The Gibson V8 was less powerful, but hopefully more reliable, as a similar engine is used in every car in the LMP2 class with few issues. Besides this, few major changes were made to this ENSO CLM P101. The 2019 Le Mans would be the first one with the apparently more reliable Gibson engine. Qualifying would be a similar story to every other Le Mans. The car is just fast enough to clear LMP2. The engine switch made the car roughly a second slower than last year. As for the race, the car spent much of its time battling fuel pump issues in the LMP2 class, and suffered through a couple extended pit stops before the gearbox gave up the ghost around the halfway mark. Yet another DNF to add to the pile. At this point, reaching nightfall is an accomplishment for the team. 2020 saw a reduced effort for the Bykolles team, mostly because they were preparing for the new Hypercar regulations. They only entered Spa and Le Mans. Spa was basically more of the same for the team, qualifying behind the 3 other LMP1s but ahead of LMP2. The car ran decently for much of the race, until it ran into technical issues midway, and had to make an extended pit stop. The car ended up finishing 27th place, next to the last of the finishing cars. No known special preparations were made for Le Mans. The team was just simply aiming to finally finish the race in a classified position. The P101 qualified last in class like usual, just faster than the LMP2 field. The car proved mostly reliable outside of an extended pit stop for gearbox issues for the first part of the race. Come nightfall, the rear wing came loose and fell off in the high-speed Dunlop curves, throwing the car into the barriers and out of the race. This ended the CLM P101's surprisingly long, checkered career. Despite the car's real-life competitive history coming to a close, one can download an officially licensed virtual rendition of the P101 in the game rFactor 2. The car uses real-life data and comes with both the Nissan and the Gibson engines, so any person with the game can reenact what could have been in situations in the virtual world. Another, though unbranded version, exists in the game as the Corsa, which only has the Gibson engine. Both cars seem to handle fairly similarly between the games. 2 chassis also appear to be for sale in Monaco as of 2022, one with the AER V6 and another with the Gibson V8. You have to contact the seller for any real info, so the price is probably too high for mere mortals. However, the Bykolles story is far from over. From the ashes of the former LMP1 class comes the new Hypercars class in the World Endurance Championship. Hypercars are intended to be simpler, cheaper, heavier, and slower than the outgoing LMP1 cars. Aerodynamic efficiency is limited to a lift-to-drag ratio of 4:1, and the car can conform to any design as long as it fits in that window. This allows for more room for styling compared to the purely functional LMP1 models. Power is also capped at around 60 to 70 horsepower, including any potential hybrid systems. Lastly, close competition is ensured by a balanced performance system not unlike what the immensely popular GT3 category has. As you might imply by now, Bykolles has a planned Hypercar program which was announced in 2020. Very little is known about it besides the fact that it has a similar Gibson V8 to the CLM P101 and is likely to race in 2023, provided they can deal with current supply chain issues. Interestingly, a road version and track day special variant of the Hypercar was announced, but the current status is unknown. Hopefully, the new Bykolles Hypercar, which is likely to be badged fanwall like the old Formula 1 team, is less cursed than its predecessor and is actually capable of fighting for victories. A 2022 debut for the Hypercar is looking very unlikely because the ACO rejected Bykolles' entry application for that season of the World Endurance Championship, citing issues with the formatting of their application and delayed homologation. The ENSO CLM P101 has had a very rough existence during its surprisingly long competitive career spanning from 2013 to 2020. Most top-flight race cars have a shelf life of less than half of that. The car competed through a couple of major rules changes and managed to keep up to an extent. Despite the horrible look, the car did improve massively over the years. The CLM P101 is almost unrecognizable from its debut form as a Lotus badged LMP2, aside from the cockpit shape. Throughout all the memes, jokes, and fires, the ENSO has driven its way into the hearts of many a sports car fan looking for an underdog to root for. Au revoir, ENSO CLM P101.